If you want to work with the materials of any course that you download, they contain files of code that you need to work with a specific program. So far, we already know how to work with Jupyter Lab. Now we will work with another popular application, which is Visual Studio Code. We click on their website. We download the recommended installation. In your case, you may see a Windows installer. We have the file on the downloads folder. We make sure to uncompress the file. And there we have the application installed. If you have the Windows, you will click on the installer and continue with the recommended options all the time. In Mac, you should move the Visual Studio application to the Applications folder. Once you have the application installed, you open the application Visual Studio Code. You will see this application, Visual Studio, in your computer. To work with a folder that contains the files and the materials of the course, you should drag and drop the folder and access the materials from the sidebar, in this case, Lesson 1. At the beginning, they will ask you if you want to install the recommended Python extension from Microsoft Python language. Which are the extensions? If we go to this icon, we will see the marketplace of applications from the Visual Studio Code editor. To work with any programming language, we should install the required extensions to make our experience better while developing the code. If we click on install the recommended packages, we see Python that we can install in this button. Also, I recommend you to install the Jupyter extension. You click on install. You can close these files. Now open the script. Also, you can create a new file of code if you click on the plus and write the new notebook title. Always make sure that you use IPNV for the Visual Studio application to detect the type of file and programming language that you are using, in this case Python. Now you can work with the code. We can import Plotly Express. They will ask to select the kernel, which is an intermediary between the Python that we have installed in our computer and the application Visual Studio Code. If you click on select another kernel and then Python environments, you will see the many Pythons that you have installed in your computer. If this is the first time that you work with Visual Studio and that you have installed Python, you will see an environment called Base, and this is the one that you should use. Another configuration that you must set up to avoid future problems is the terminal profile. To change it, we open the command palette. In Windows, you press Ctrl-Shift-P. In Apple MacOS, we press Command-Shift-P. In this command prompt, we have all of the possible configurations in the Visual Studio application. We look for the terminal profile. We select the default profile. We see these options because we are using a Mac, but if you are using Windows, you will see Command Prompt and PowerShell. Make sure that you select the Command Prompt. In our case, we will use setsh. Now we can access some datasets, such as the Gapminder. We save it into a variable. There we see the data, and we can plot it using the scatter. Also, if you want to see the documentation of a function, I recommend that you install the docs view extension, which is this one. Now, in the sidebar of Visual Studio, you will see the documentation, and if you click on the scatter, you will have the instructions on how to use the function. The first parameter that they ask after the parentheses is data frame, which is the data that we have in this part of the code, And now they ask for X and Y, which are the columns that we use on the X-axis, the horizontal one, the GDP per cap, which is this column, and the Y column, the life expectancy. We execute, and there we see the plot. Another thing that you should know is that even though we have created this file new notebook.ipnv with this application, the Visual Studio, the file is saved in our computer. We can access from the Explorer, Lesson 1, New Notebook. If we open the terminal and we access the Jupyter Lab, the other application to edit the code, we access the Downloads folder, click on Course Materials, Lesson 1, and there we see the code that we had created in the other application, Visual Studio Code. In conclusion, the files of code and the folders that you create are accessible to any application that you have in your computer.